Awesome. So for a decade to prevent this, and my mom starts screaming, and we call an ambulance, we call 911. These send us to a ambulance dispatcher, and then like literally fire trucks and ambulances come to our house. And again, I flew into New York that day in the morning, and this happens at night. I'm like super tired, ready to go to bed early, and then my sister gets a seizure, and my parents look exhausted, so I end up going to this trip to the hospital with my sister. Now, my sister has a very special case, which required other people from the ambulance EMT department to come to our house and like diagnose her to see like which hospital to go to and all the things they need to do. I'm gonna pause here and I'll connect back to the story in just a bit. So, for those of you guys just meeting me for the first time, my name is Yassine. I'm the founder and CEO of Headstarter. I started Headstarter about 2 years ago with my co-founder Faizan. A few things that I do is I live in a hacker house called Powell Street. You can look at our website, powell.st. We have 7 roommates that got into YC, 5 that are backed by A16Z. I'm also an A16Z scout, which means I can invest directly from their speedrun fund, which is their pre-seed and seed fund, into companies that are just starting out. The partners at A16Z refer to me as talent extraordinaire. Like I'm literally doing their job for them because I give them a lot of really good deal flow. So they come to me for like they take whatever advice or referral I give very highly, and oftentimes they'll end up in like accelerated interviews or final round interviews after I refer them. Obviously, I have a very high bar into who I refer, and I'm hoping I can refer some of you guys from this challenge. If you end up getting referred and going through the process, you might end up getting $1 million, sometimes over like wired to you overnight. For fun, I've also done the New York City and San Francisco marathon. So I did that in 2023 and I did that this year. So you guys are all here because of the Great Lock-in Weekend. The premise of the Great Lock-in Weekend is one weekend, you're going to build out one product and get one customer. Are you guys hyped for this? Drop in the chat if you guys are hyped for this. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Now, let's talk about dates. When is the Great Lock-in Weekend happening? So we just pushed our dates a little bit just to accommodate a few more sponsors and to have a few more people apply or like get their teammates to set up. Also, I'm actively looking at the Discord. Some people brought some great ideas or great constraints like, hey, if I'm selling to businesses, I cannot get customers in the weekend. So now, the dates you need to remember are November 1st to November 9. So the Great Lock-in Weekend is really a lock-in week, and it's happening from the Saturday right here till the following Saturday. So it's about 8 days. The Saturday where the Great Lock-in Weekend kicks off, that's your revenue window. That's when the ticker starts. If you had $0, $100, $1,000, or $10,000 before this, that's great. That's not going to be counted. What's going to be counted is all revenue that you make from 1st of Saturday till the following Saturday. Then we're going to have the official weekend of the lock-in is going to happen that last weekend of this window. So from the 7th to the 9th, with 7 being the online kickoff and 8th being the virtual kickoff we'll do in person. So, so far so good. Everything sort of makes sense. We're gonna have more times for Q&A, but I just want to give like the brief description because you guys came here for information session. So I want to make sure that this part is clear. I'm going to go into detail about what to do in the Great Lock-in Weekend, but before that, there's a few more points that I want to make. The first of which, it's really not a lock-in weekend. It's a lock-in week, right? So you're trying to build, or not build, but sell, trying to go viral within this 1 week of constraint and show something at the end. You're not trying to build a perfect product or prototype, but an imperfect product and a Band-Aid product, a bucket that has tons of holes, tons of like leaks, but somehow works. And at the end, you want to come up with like one customer, ideally more than one customer. And we can talk about that in detail. Now, going back to the story that I had, I'm in New York. My sister has a seizure. We have this ambulance that I decided to go on because my parents are tired and they don't want to go through all this, right? I take one for the team. In the ambulance, what every EMT has to do is type a 15-minute note on like what the situation was and why they were called. And they write that during the trip to go to the hospital. Our friends here, his name is John Paul or JP for short. He's built this company called CareSwift. They were part of this summer's YC batch. And you can look it up. They're not based in New York. He's built a tool that helps EMTs basically, if it takes you 15 to 20 minutes to write a 500-word report, he's able to reduce that to just 30 seconds to a minute. How does he do that? The way he does that is he will ask you some preliminary questions about like the visit of the EMT, and then he will ask you to talk everything that went down in a 45-second voice memo. Then using AI, he'll transcribe both what you said in your initial intake form, which is about 10 questions for the EMT person, and then a voice memo. The main thing I want to point out is it's a problem that he's solving. If an EMT is able to spend 14 minutes less in filling that out, they can spend that time with the patient, right? Imagine if someone's having a heart attack. Imagine if, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, they're probably stressed and they go through a lot of stuff. So this is an example of a company that really got their roots of, they started off with some association with Headstarter. They're part of our challenge where they had to build a bunch of AI projects last summer. They got into current YC batch, and soon probably they'll hire from Headstarter as well. So here's an example of a company that got into YC. The reason why I'm saying this is I live in a house where left and right, people are getting into YC or getting backed by A16Z. Some of you guys here are guaranteed to get funding. My goal is if among everyone here, there's 3 or 4 people that are going to get into YC or some type of funding, let's make that 8 or 9 people, right? Let's increase the odds. And everyone else is so much more better off, right? With the constraints that were put together in this program. Now, a few kind of like housekeeping, right? There are different types of businesses out there. You have mom and pop shops, like corner pizzerias, delis, stores, etc. You have e-commerce stores, and they say like 25% of all e-commerce stores clear more than $1 million in a year, I believe, or in a month. So e-commerce is a great way to make money. Obviously, the margins are really low, right? If you think about like Amazon, when you look at one product, you'll have like literally 1,000 other versions of the product for like 1 cent or 2 cents less, or 10 cents or 4 cents less. So there's not too much of a moat. And agencies. So agencies you can think about like in the biggest span of things are things like Accenture, Bain, Consult, like all these consulting, right? Or if you're looking for more of like a smaller agency, maybe you're like an advertising agency and other people pay you money for like Facebook ads, SEO, whatever. Or you're doing the same thing for like technology, right? Like you're building websites, you're building apps. My first company was an agency. We made a couple $1,000s a month back in like 2019, 2020, put that money into Bitcoin and the rest was history, right? But then we also put that money into altcoin and we lost some money too. So just some lesson learned there. And then you have software. So why are software businesses super cool? The reason software businesses are super cool is for every additional product, there is like 0 COGS usually, or cost of goods sold. So if you have like a toothbrush and you're producing another toothbrush, it's going to cost you maybe like 10 cents, right? If for a software product, it doesn't cost Facebook when another user logs in. It doesn't really cost like the person creating the like Instagram app when another person downloads Instagram. It doesn't cost TikTok when someone creates another video or watches another video, right? So the cost is marginally 0. You will have fixed costs, and that will be like, you know, your tech team, your sales team, etc. But everything else, the variable costs are actually very, very low, right? Like, especially today. Now, there's actually a new type of business, right? Which is an AI-enabled service. So if you think about an agency as sort of a service provider and software as this like thing that like infinitely scales and doesn't cost much and has fixed costs as a company. Think about Salesforce. They're the ones that do this like super well, right? I think they're clearing like 40 billion per quarter. What is in between now is new companies like Palantir and Scale AI that are able to provide services that Palantir is charging for some of their work like $100 million to $1 billion a year to like countries, governments, massive companies, and some of it is handheld, like real people have to be involved, sort of like an agency, and some of it is automated using software. So that's kind of like just something you want to keep in mind when you're starting a business, right? Very specifically, I want everyone here to point their direction in one particular area. And I'm just gonna do a quick check. So far, it makes sense about this right here in terms of like services and like mom and pop shops. Like drop in the chat, this sort of makes sense. And can you guys like share like what type of business you guys like want to try? Like what is your like goal? Like what is your like focus? Nice. We're gonna go more into this. So we'll talk about like different sectors, but real quick, right? All right. So this person, like we all look up to, his name is Mamoon Hameen. He's a partner or general partner at this fund called Kleiner Perkins. If you heard of Neo Scholars, you may have heard of KP Fellows or Thiel Fellows, right? Think about like KP Fellows at the bottom of the barrel, and like this guy like invests in companies. He was like, for example, an early investor in Figma. He was an early investor in many other companies that did really, really well. So he did this podcast with Ariana Huffington, which I was listening to while I was in the gym, and he mentioned it very nicely. He talked about AI co-pilots today and the fact that at the highest skill levels in society, we have like doctors, lawyers, engineers, like other things, right? Think about like pilots, I don't know. The highest like skill levels, right? In the world of AI is not good enough to replace any of these roles, right? But it could be a co-pilot. It can be an assistant sort of. So AI is today, co-pilots are not good enough to fully do the work of an established, reputable doctor or a reputable partner at a lawyer firm or a top engineer at a top AI lab, right? AI is not able to do the full work, but it can be co-pilots. Now, on the other hand, if you go like one level beyond, right, like the tertiary or the peripherals around these highest skilled workers. Like if you have doctors, under them you have nurses and PAs and assistants and so many other like roles surrounding them. And for lawyers, you have paralegals and entry level, lawyers. And for engineers, you have like entry level engineers and even senior level engineers, right? Now, co-pilots are able to replace some part of the workflow. So they can't really replace everything a nurse does. They can't really replace everything a paralegal does, but it can probably do a bunch of things, right, that they do. And so it can save their time, potentially even like, you know, make the need to hire less paralegals for someone, for a partner at a law firm, or like for a tech lead or engineering manager or engineering organization at a company. That's why it's so hard to get entry-level jobs nowadays because a lot of these co-pilots are doing a good job. Specifically, what are these co-pilots that are in play, right? So for Cursor, they're making the work of every engineer pull the weight of 50 engineers. For Harvey, they're helping automate a lot of things. For lawyers, there's Hebbia for finance, and there's Hippocratic AI for like nurses and healthcare. So what I would like to encourage everyone is to think about a particular idea, a startup in a problem space, right? That's going to automate or particularly take one part of a flow, like a workflow, and automate that, right? So think there's so many examples, and here's just a few. Think about drafting emails for sales. Think about doing lead gen for heart surgeons. And these are real ideas I've been pitched that I really liked. Think about like analysis of post hoc. There's a company called Outset.ai. I think that's what, so they basically take your stream of all the videos or the sessions that someone goes on your landing website and they'll have AI do an analysis of them. Think about like, BugBot, Graphite, what's Daksha's company? GrabTile, right? Like all the PRs and review code review, like doing parts of the process that make like the flow easier, right? So obviously you might already come up with some idea, but I'm just sharing there's going to be a lot of automation. It's going to be a lot of AI enablement. And if you can fit your like wedge into this hyper segmented growth, it's a really good place to be at. Um, the last thing I want to say before going to like actual logistics about the great lock-in is building a startup is privilege. Like some people don't have the opportunity to even think about that idea. Like they'll have to start working since they're in high school. Or some people have to start working right after like college. They don't have the opportunity or the time or the time of mind, right, to actually pursue something. Here's one thing you want to just keep in mind, right? Starting a startup is a difficult process. Starting a startup and having an idea is a privilege. But with that being said, the bar to start startup is like lower now than ever before. So make sure that you have some type of like momentum and quick growth. That is what we've created this great lock-in weekend essentially, right? So here's the things you need to know for great lock-in weekend. Number one is you need a great problem idea. My suggestion is go for software and or an AI-enabled service, and then find a clear problem in the world of automating some type of like role, right? That's where the real disruption of AI is going to happen. And it's going to happen not just like for knowledge workers, but also even blue collar workers. There's robots like Figure. Like one of my roommates worked on creating like the spatial LLM models, right? Like all the LLMs today are text based. Imagine like one that's more like around like space and 3D. There's a lot of data like that needs like so think about a particular workflow and how you can automate some of that workflow, whether it's like in the knowledge workspace or like in my roommate's case, even in blue collar space, right? And number three is you need a team or a plan to like go forward with. So you don't want to go solo. You can go solo, but you definitely need a community. And that's like why we're here, right? I'm assuming one of the reasons why you applied for my roommate's company is called Open Mind, if you're asking. They raised like I don't know, like massive Series A, like pretty massive Series A. So you guys can work solo, but at least have a community, have something that's going to hold you accountable, have something that's like a forcing function. That's why accelerators like YC and Speedrun from ACC and Z are great because everyone around you is trying to like not get that annual revenue going up or get customers, get growth in some way so that you can showcase that to investors or you can showcase that when you're hiring people or just for your for your startup to just survive, right? Another day. So here's what you need for the great lock-in weekend. So far, so good. W's in the chat if it makes sense. All right, cool. So now, here's what does not matter for a great lock-in weekend. Having a nice deck. No one, and I'll tell you with this nicest way, no one cares about your pitch deck. Your pitch deck does not matter. Don't spend any time on pitch deck, data room, investor materials. No one cares about that. Like the people that do care about that should not like are not the right people you want to get money from. So don't care about pitch deck. And I'll tell you this one side story. The best founders I know who raise more money than typically people do in their stage don't sometimes even have a pitch deck. Like is the investors come to them wanting to invest in them. Or if they have a pitch deck, it's like very ugly. It's like literally made in Google Sheets or Google like slides without any, like designer touch. So you want to focus on building the business and growing customers and brand and growth over spending time prettying up investor materials. Number two is what we don't want to have is an empty inbox. Everyone here should be reaching out to other people on LinkedIn or email or collecting some type of customer feedback. You don't want to work solo. You don't want to work out of your butt. You want to have actual proof points that showcase people want what you're building. Not just want, but they really need what you're building. You're solving a key like process that needs a solution. The last thing is or the last two things, you don't want to have an empty calendar, right? You want to be booking that with like potential people who can use your product, showing them what the concept is about, seeing if they understand it. Maybe like tell them what the problem is and see if they like feel the problem, and then tell them to come up with a solution. And it's up to you whether you choose a Steve Jobs mentality who says that I know what my customers don't know they need, but once they taste it, they can't live without. Or you can go like this lean startup methodology where you interview like 20 people and you ask them to come up with a solution, and you see like what the customer really wants and you build for them. That's like the Amazon. Amazon does that way, right? And the last thing is you don't want to have empty metrics, right? You want your Stripe dashboard to go up. You want your Google Analytics to be popping. All these things are important. And not having those is very bad, right? It's like that's something you don't want to have in the Great Lock-in Weekend. So how does this Great Lock-in Weekend work, like logistically? So everyone here is going to be put into three buckets. Bucket number one is you started making money before you applied. Bucket number two is you started making money after you applied. And bucket number three is you're not trying to make money at all. It's all like a social good, like kind of tier. Now, within these three buckets, you're going to have different models, right? So you're going to have B2B, which is you're selling to other businesses, whether it's small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large businesses, or enterprises. You got B2C, which is going to be smaller, like, like your everyday consumers, like all of us are consumers. And then each of them are going to have some subsectors, some subsectors. What we're going to do is we're going to bucket you guys into all the subsectors into one, right? And then see who the emerging winner is. And then from there, we're going to have like one winner in each in sort of like a bracket style tournament that's going to happen live on our website. And I'll explain how that's going to happen. If you want to take a screenshot of this or something, like here's like some sectors that are existing. Now, these are not all the sectors, there's more. But here's like a brief idea about some of the areas, right? So you can think about if a bunch of people are selling like infra for AI models, or a bunch of you guys are working on maybe like something to do with accounting, right? You will be bucketed with other people also building in that space initially. And then we want to have one emerging winner per sector, and then have those sectors go head to head in other types of business models, and then have those business models eventually a winner to come up. So you might be wondering, how are we going to determine who is going to move on forward with this bracket style elimination round? Well, we need a couple of data from you guys. We need some information. And all those information is going to happen on our website. So we'll have a platform, we'll give you guys some access. It'll be very simple, so don't have too much high expectations. We're a pretty small team, and we're trying to keep it lean. And we want to deliver to you like a quality experience. So what you're going to upload is a landing page website, right? Something that describes what you're doing, nicely sells like your value prop. Number two is your Stripe. So if you have not incorporated it yet, or you want to incorporate, we will try to have a partnership where you can create your banking account with Stripe, and potentially we'll try to find some deals where you can incorporate for free. Don't quote me on that. I'm going to work on that in the upcoming week. And if I don't come up with something, I would highly encourage you guys to come up with some type of like EID, or at least like have a way to make to charge people, right? Maybe it's just a banking invoice. Maybe just find a way to charge people and show us a proof that you have people paying you for your product, right? So that's number two. Number three is analytics. So if you have a landing website and a product, you can throw in something called PostHog or Mixpanel. Well, there's so many of these tools. Usually PostHog is a really good one if you're building something. Vercel even has some stuff. Even vibe coded tools nowadays have analytics on it. So you can throw in analytics in your product and make sure seeing where users are spending their time, have some heat maps like Hotjar, all that is important. Next is, if you have an actual product, give us a URL where we can log in and actually, play around ourselves. And then give us an Excel sheet that lists your customers and how much you're paying. If you're going to Stripe, you can go to customers or subscriptions. You can download a website all the time, and you can send us the information. Again, we want these information on these particular dates, and perhaps even they can be like other times where you can apply, where you can upload, but at least these three inputs we want to have. And then an explanation of your customers and everything you're building, and almost like an update, right? So like what have you done so far? What is the general gist of like what you're struggling with? Because struggling with is a good thing, right? Like the best thing is like when you have a lot of people that want to buy your product, or you can easily sell, but you're not able to deliver. Like that means like you're onto something. Lastly, just two easy numbers, right? How much money have you made since the lock-in window started? And what is the total growth, right? So total growth can be measured in terms of like the day before, how quickly, how much more money you've made, or like just since your last update, how much revenue has increased in terms of like percentages. For example, someone I've referred to for the ACCNZ program, he was making like 1.2K per month, and then in between his interviews, he jumped to 2K. So now he has like a 55% increase. He can go to a partner and say, hey, since we last spoke, our revenue increased by 55% in ARR and MRR. So that looks like really good. Like, like he has good growth and good traction. And that really like matters. Um, and then lastly, after November 8th, like the top 100 teams are going to be manually like checked using like different founders who have raised money, and ideally founders who have raised so much money that now they can invest, right? So I myself will be taking a look at the top 100 teams looking to invest one to like a couple of checks, right? And so will a couple of my friends and a couple of VCs and angel investors. And we'll have an in-person summit, but more on that a little bit later. Here's some upcoming events that are pretty exciting that you guys can get some value from. Number one is next Thursday in San Francisco. We're gonna rent out like this nice place that can fit about 300 people, and we're gonna have the co-founders of Hippocratic AI come. Again, you have like Cursor for coding, Harvey for legal, Hebbia for finance. Now, Hippocratic AI is that equivalent for healthcare. So we're going to have one of the co-founders come and give a talk, and we'll probably have a couple of other founders who are going to give talks or just listen to these talks. So it'll be a great space if you're in SF or like in the general area to come check it out. It'll be first come, first serve. We'll also have like some type of bar just so the quality of everyone attending is pretty high. Also next week, one of my roommates is going to do a workshop on how to build a full GPT from scratch. He's going to copy a tutorial from Andrej Karpathy, who is one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and he has this like 5-hour tutorial where he built a transformer model in C++ from scratch. So he's going to basically dial that down a little bit and show you guys what happens behind the scenes. Again, there's no need to know any of this to succeed in this, but if this is of interest, you want to get into some technical nuance, here's an opportunity for you to do that. Now, some other things we're going to do is the following week, we're going to have some seed founders who've raised anywhere between $2 to $10 million share about how they raise and how they sell, from cold calling to like email channeling to like creating FOMO, where people book like calendar like meetings to learn about your product. They will discuss these things. Again, real people who built real businesses and got real investors and hired real teams. And then what I will try to do is I will try to work with a few influencers, and any influencers you guys want to get in touch, let me know. For example, you want to get in touch with Ali Abdal, I have someone who knows Ali Abdal, right? If you want to have Ali Abdal in a Zoom meeting like today, we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll have it during the Great Lock-in Weekend period. Say, hey, I know a bunch of influencers, and particularly I want to know how they got viral on different platforms, from LinkedIn to Instagram to TikTok. I think that's going to be very valuable. Heck, man, maybe I'll ask Roy Lee to come to our upcoming event. And fun fact is Roy Lee actually stayed in my house, right? All before cooling interview coder, he stayed and crashed in our house. And we have videos. We have like archives of all of this. Maybe if something we can share, if he gives me permission, right? We're not getting Mr. Beast. That's probably not happening. But we could probably get Mr. Beast's investors. So like there's something called Night Ventures or Night Studio Ventures. They're the ones that take Mr. Beast's money and invest it into like different companies, right? So maybe we probably can get those. There's a girl named Emily. You guys can follow her on Twitter. So the in-person summit is happening November 8 to November 9. It's invite only. We want to send these invites probably by the end of next week and probably even like into the week after, which is not going to give you guys a lot of time to book tickets. Again, ideally, if you're not in SF, we pay for your flight. So if you are not part of like in a driving distance to come to the in-person summit and you're invited, we will probably try to pay for a flight. And don't quote me on this, depends on how much like we negotiate with our sponsors, but we want to make it such that you guys have the opportunity. Arhan will fly you out. He sold his company twice, so he's definitely someone we'd want to bring out to an in-person summit. So we want to yeah, go to some Q&A. This is kind of like my finishing. We want to fly you guys out based on like, because we don't want to look through your revenues. It's not going to be fair. What we'll Index on highly is just what you've done in the past. For example, have you built a company in the past and sold it? Have you built side projects in the past? Are you like, if you're non-technical, what are the types of, things you've done that make you stand out? For example, you're a competitive debater. You're like a D1 athlete. You are like, like something about you that shows that you're like different, right? You're like apart. So the more oblivious the thing that makes you apart is, the more chances we would want to bring you out here in SF. And then everyone else who is like near the SF Bay Area will be a little bit more lenient because you're already here, so we probably want to encourage you to come, but still we'll have a bar because of there's a lot of people participating, right? Really quickly, right before we go into Q&A, I want to talk about teammates. If you have teammates who are not accepted, make sure that number one, they apply. And then number two, they are automatically accepted if you are accepted. There's a few caveats, like for example, if you're in the US and you have a teammate on the other side of the world, it makes things a little bit weird because how you're gonna hop on a Zoom call and all that logistic is gonna be a nightmare. But if you have a teammate and you are accepted, but your teammate is not, they are accepted by default. If you have not accepted the acceptance form, please complete the acceptance form by tonight. This is very important. We need to know this because that's the information that we have when we're going to invite people for the in-person summit. Same thing for your teammates. So you make sure that they have the acceptance form as well.